Hey guys, I'm Ryan Drapella. I'm 24 years old. I run a custom wood product manufacturing company out of El Campo, Texas. I'm an Aggie class of 2019. Currently, we're in my 9,000 square foot facility. But let me take you back to where it all began. All right, so now we're in my first shop where my woodworking journey began. But let me give you a little bit of backstory on where my entrepreneurial journey began, right? So I have always been kind of an entrepreneur, whether it's in third grade, I used to sell jerky that I made from deer that I killed, or I used to sell Pokemon cards, baseball cards, candy, the little tech decks. I don't even remember the tech decks. I sold those 5th and 6th grade. I used to make duct tape wallets and sell those. Really anything to make a buck, because growing up I didn't really have a lot. I had everything I needed, but I didn't have anything extra, I guess you'd say. So entrepreneurship, even in my early years when I didn't even know how to spell that word or what it means, was always something just to make a little bit of extra money to buy the fruit roll-ups or the cookies in the cafeteria, or to buy clothes, school supplies, etc., right? So even my freshman year in high school, I used to go to the Dollar General, which is a couple blocks down the road, and walk in there and buy these Sour Power belts. They were 10 for $1, and I would walk back to school and sell them for 25 cents a piece. So I was making 150% profit on just walking 2 blocks away from school and coming back from school and selling them. So doing stuff like that is kind of what led me to be creative and kind of be an entrepreneur in general. It wasn't based off of passion or anything like that. It was just purely based off of want and need, because I really needed money, and so what I have to do, I had to sell. So fast forward to my sophomore year in high school, I'm taking a woodshop class, and I need some extra money. And so I take these scraps from the high school woodshop, and I start making cutting boards. And I started selling these cutting boards for, $100 a piece, and I'm like, oh, I can really make some money off of this, And sometimes I would actually get my classmates, I'd pay for their lunch if they worked in the shop with me. So it was an hour of labor, and lunch was $5. So I was really getting $5 an hour of labor, which was genius back in the day. So this is me as a 15, 16-year-old kid, already kind of starting to employ people, building cutting boards out of scrap, so cheap material, because I couldn't really afford any material, and I was making $100 items, purely based off of really it cost me nothing, right? Because it was a class. And so from there, my summer job at the time, I was actually a welder. And so my summer job, going from my sophomore to junior year in high school, I quit because I was tired of welding, and I realized that I could make twice as much making cutting boards and at the high school wood shop than I could actually welding. So I went from making minimum wage welder to probably around $15 an hour as a woodworker, right, making these cutting boards. So I kind of want to go back and show you my very first tool and kind of slowly but surely how I grew my shop to what it is today, and kind of where it all started. So come with me to the back, and I'm going to show you my very first tool. So this right here is a miter saw. Pretty much most of the basic saw in a wood shop, right? If you were going to be a seamstress, you'd get a sewing machine or a needle and thread, right? So this is my needle and thread. Now, this isn't my very, very first one. My very first one was $75. So as a sophomore in high school, I went to Harbor Freight, which is like a really cheap tool store, and bought a saw. And what I did is whatever I can make with that saw. And I think at the time I actually took pallet, and this is at this shop now. So this is the very back of my first shop. And at the time, the rest of all over there was just trash everywhere, pretty much. I say it's my dad's garage, but like any dad in a garage, it's cluttered, right? So I'm back here, and I think I'm making at the time these bottle cap tables, and I'm taking pallet wood and making these wine racks and stuff like that. Well, soon that $75 saw made me $100, $200, $300, $400. Well, as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, I didn't spend any of that money. I kept all that money, and I had that piece of equipment buy my next piece of equipment. So this was $400, and this is actually the one I bought when I was, I think, 16, 17 years old. It was $400. I got it on sale at Home Depot, And whenever all of my other friends were buying Xboxes and video games, I was trying to buy machinery. And there's one important thing to learn about on my kind of business is the importance of compound interest, but on equipment. So my view is I'm compounding machinery. So now instead of, just like compound interest works, right? You put $100 in the bank, and a year from now you get 7%, and you have 107, and that 107 at 7% a year later is now, $114 or $120, right? The same thing works in machinery. So what I did, I bought this saw for $400, and it was a definite upgrade from my first saw, right? And so I replaced the machine. So the other machine was now not working, not making me any money, but I had a better machine. And then this machine bought another machine that I no longer have, and then that machine, those two machines combined, so now I have two machines that I'm running still by myself, but now one is working and the other is working. They're both making me money. So I'm going to show you this next machine that I bought. I probably bought it when I was 18, 19 years old, so this is not a fast journey, but this machine right here allowed me to make quite a bit more money. So this machine was like $3,000. That's my niece and nephew. So this machine's like $3,000, but it enabled me to start making a different product. And really, it took my niche, my very specific niche, and started widening it. And this is a specialty machine. It's kind of a little different machine, but anyways, it's a specialty machine. So this machine allowed me to buy this machine, and then this machine, and then this machine right here. Okay? So with a $75 investment, you got me? With a $75 investment, I was able to take $75 and within 2 years turn that $75 into about $12,000 worth of machines in my teens. So what other investment can that possibly do where you take $75 and turn it into $12,000 worth of machines, right? But that wasn't all. So I started running out of room. So I started having this shop, and I started really growing a little too fast. And so now I'm going to show you kind of where I started expanding in my parents' barn. This right here used to actually be horse stalls. All of this in here used to be horse stalls. And this is the point where I started actually growing my business. So if you come in here, I poured this concrete slab when I was 20 years old at this point. And I started buying computer technology machines called CNC machines, right? So this is my CNC room. And this is at the time, my big Mac Daddy machine. And this little machine right here, which I'm actually going to run for you real quick. So this machine does all of our engravings. Alright, so we started growing more and more, and so I bought this machine, which was $6,000, I believe, when I was 19 years old. And keep in mind that all those other machines were now making me money, and I started needing a competitive advantage, right? So I needed to get kind of a technology behind me, so I bought this CNC, which is a computer numerically controlled, right? So this is a hobbyist one, about the smallest one you can get. And then that one made enough money where I could buy this one only a year later. So that little machine in 1 year produced enough money to buy this machine, which is a huge upgrade, and now my competitive advantage goes a little bit higher because now I have better technology than a lot of woodworkers. And especially now I can start beating the hobbyists that are competing against me at the craft shows or on Facebook or whatever, right? So just keep in mind that this little machine right here produced enough money in 1 year to buy this big machine right here. Okay, so it's all about sales. Well, with this big machine, we started producing more and more product. So now let me show you The next year, when we had to expand and actually poured a little bit more concrete, took out our foaling stalls at our horse barn, so we actually had 2 stalls that all the horses had all their babies in, and we actually had to rip out those stalls and put concrete in that area to have enough room for sanders for help to come in and start sanding product at that point. So let's go walk over there. So this right here is actually where we moved and started sanding at a year after we poured the other slab, which is right here. This is all still inside my parents' barn. All used to be horse stalls, and just slowly, it doesn't look like much, right? But just keep in mind that this was producing a lot of income, okay? And now we had to have a spot to store all my products that machine in there was cutting out. Guys out here were sanding. And so now let's walk to the storage room where I kept all of my product at the time. So this is my storage room and was my packaging room, and it's still a little bit my packaging room. But keep in mind, over here, we had enough product. See these little stacks right here? So these are my man stand products. Whenever we got busy, these stacks are to the ceiling, and they come out 10 foot, where we had over 5,000 of these in here at one time. All produced with a $20,000. So that bigger CNC was $20,000. The little CNC is $6,000. So now at this point in time, when I'm filling up this room full of these docking stations, these man stands, I probably have $30,000 worth of equipment, and with 5,000 of these items stacked up, it's probably a little over $200,000 of raw inventory that we could possibly sell. Okay, but I want to hit a certain point with y'all, and then set it down there. I want to hit a certain point, and I want to make this crystal clear. Okay, before we go over there and look at my new shop and all the cool things about it and how it's giant maroon and white and it's just gorgeous and beautiful and I love it. We built it. I'll tell you more about that later. I want to pinpoint this, and this has to be crystal clear. This has to be crystal clear, okay? I started this shop whenever I was 16 years old, okay? And throughout all of college, or all of high school, whenever my friends would go and, let's say, class was over, they would either go home or maybe they had an off period, right? They would go to a friend's house, play Xbox, whatever. I went to the wood shop and I worked, okay? As a 16-year-old, the teacher actually gave me the keys to that wood shop so I can go make cutting boards, okay? And I didn't have very much money, right? So I'm going over there working my tail off. After school, after football workouts, after track workouts, I would go to the shop and work. So keep all this in mind. Now, fast forward, I graduate high school. I'm starting to go to a local junior college for my first semester. And so I go to the local junior college, but I still come back here and I work. And when I'm saying work, guys, I'm putting in, as a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, I'm still putting in 80 hours of work a week, okay? And a lot of the time, like, after I was 16, 17, I wasn't making a lot of money per hour, right? But I was putting in so many hours where $5 an hour with 80 hours of work, you're still making $400 a week. Because I didn't know how to price stuff. I didn't know really what to do. And I think when I was 18 years old, I got in my first store. It was a little gas station right down the road. And I got in my first store, made this beautiful display, but my products didn't really sell that well. It didn't really help. They were too overpriced, and I started learning little tweaks and techniques and stuff about going all online or being in stores and markups. And keep in mind, I'm still from a small town, so at this point, I know nothing about the world. Really, not much, okay? But I did have a goal in mind. I knew I wanted to be successful. I didn't know what success meant, but I had this internal drive that I was going to be successful. Well, fast forward to my freshman year in college, I transferred to Blinn up at A&M, and my first 2 years up at Blinn, I ended up staying 2 years at Blinn. My first 2 years at Blinn, I did not stay a single weekend in College Station. I would actually schedule my classes to end on Thursday at lunch and start Monday at lunch. And I'm taking physics, calculus, chemistries, all these hard ones, because I was actually a chemical engineering major at the time. And just know, for the first 2 years, only days I partied were on like Tuesday evenings. I did all my homework on Wednesdays. Thursday I left. And I was still working 80 hours a week in that part of the shop, because this was just now getting built, or it might not have been built yet. It's a little mixed up. But just know, I was working that much, okay? And to put this into perspective, when I was 20 years old, I walked into HEB, and I had my girlfriend with me at the time, and I saw this tube, okay? It was in the meat section. And I asked her what that tube was. And she said, that's hamburger meat. That's ground chuck. And I have never seen or even knew that they sold hamburger meat at the stores. So I had no idea. And this is 20 years old. So this is only 4 years ago. I'm 24 right now. 4 years ago, I did not know they sold ground meat at the stores. And then she went to the freezer section and told me that they sold frozen vegetables. So as a 20-year-old, I'm in college, already in Blinn 2 years, or year and a half. I just realized that they sold ground meat at the store. Why I'm telling you this story is that you don't have to be the smartest person or anything like that. You have to have the drive and the passion to want to make it happen. And me as a 20-year-old, I didn't know what I was doing most of the time. A lot of people thought I did, but I really had no idea. But I just worked, and I worked, and I worked, and I worked. Now at 21, 22, I think by the time I graduated A&M, I ended up staying about 6 weekends total. All of college. I missed 2 full seasons of Aggie football games. I think I ended up going to about 4 games. All of my A&M career, right? And when I transferred into A&M, I was actually in construction science because I wanted to use their wood shop. Well, by the time I got to their wood shop, my wood shop was actually better than theirs. And so I transferred out and went down to agricultural economics, where I met Dr. Rister and started developing my ignorance into knowledge and wisdom. Because I started learning about the world and people, and that there is actual meat they sell at the stores and frozen vegetables and all kind of stuff, right? But, I worked, and just, my shop, before I left this shop and went and built the other shop, which was very recent, what I just showed you, that cluster of stuff, which I'd like to say it was prettier when we're in here working all the time, but it really wasn't. It has been clustered like that probably for 5, 6, 7 years now, and everything was just that much of a cluster. But it produced income, and it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't need to be pretty. At the end of the day, money is green, and it's in the bank account. Okay, and hard work, nobody can take that away from you. Okay, not a single person can take hard work away from you, and the willingness and the passion and the drive to make a good product, okay, and sell it to all over the world. So that's what I'm in. I'm in online business, right? So just keep in mind, whenever we go to the new shop, which we're about to do, about my new 9,000 square foot shop, all that good stuff, I was in this shop up until about 3 months ago, okay? And I had 15 people in this shop at one point in time. It was crazy. It was hectic. I can't tell you how many times I'm here, probably as a 19, 20-year-old, 3 a.m. in the morning, bawling my eyes out crying because I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to make this. Some product failed and it had to be at the store the next day. There's many times that I made stuff and we're driving to an auction where I'm selling this stuff at, and I'm in the trailer actually painting a coat of paint on it to get there on time, right? So we always made it on time. I kept my word. I never not made an order on time. I was very fast, but I can't tell you how many nights I stayed up and maybe got an hour of sleep, or how many times I drove. I remember this one semester I had physics on Monday morning, or Monday at 10:40. I would drive on no sleep. I'd go down this local gas station on the way to College Station, which is about 2 hours away. and I would buy 2 Red Bulls. And I would drive, and I would drink these 2 Red Bulls, and by the time I got to class, I was just shaking, right? But I was so exhausted, and my truck at the time had, no AC, no radio. I drove my windows down. Sometimes I had headphones on, and granted, I had, $40,000 or $30,000 worth of equipment, but that equipment's making me money. That truck's not going to make me any money. So this goes back to the compound interest thing. Make sure that you have income producing something, and don't look for all the glory and the glamour and all that stuff. I mean, I was still wearing high school t-shirts and all that stuff. So I cared nothing about looking the part. I just knew that this $10 could make me $11. This can make me $12. This $100 machine over here, within a year, it can make me another $100. So the more machinery I bought and the more I actually used that machinery, I would be making money. I had no loans, didn't take any loans, no debt. I didn't really know how banks operated or anything like that. But I just worked, and you just got to keep that in mind. So by the time I actually moved this shop over to my new shop and built that new shop, this shop, what you just seen, this 2,200 square feet, okay, this hodgepodge, see all that walking we did, that's not very efficient. So if you're a manufacturing guy, that's not efficient, what we did. But we did over $1 million in sales while I was in college. In 3 years, I believe we did over $1 million in sales at this facility right here in my parents' backyard in a barn. I'm actually living, I don't even have a room anymore, so I'm living out in a barn in an old hayloft at the time. And I'm still living there today, ironically, right? So it's not glamorous. It's not like I'm doing these great, big, amazing things, drive these nice cars, do all this stuff. I had this mindset right here that I was going to be a self-made future millionaire, and that's kind of why I'm wearing this shirt right now. And this is you have to have that passion, that drive. That's the number one thing that an entrepreneur must have. They have to have the passion. They want to do it, because you can't tell me when your back's against the wall and you're working on 2 hours of sleep and somebody's calling you. They don't care that you're working on 2 hours of sleep. Nobody cared about what I was going through when I was making this whole facility, this whole shop. What they cared about was the end product, okay? So so don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't ever do that, because nobody cares. Really and truly, they don't really care. They care about the end result, and it doesn't matter what it takes to get there. You need to get there, okay? So have passion, have drive, and work your tail off. With that being said, let's go to the new shop. All right, so now we're in my new shop, my big facility, and keep in mind that whenever we're building this to stay cheap, me and my crew of 3 people, we built this whole entire barn and all the office spaces way in the corner. We built all that ourselves. We didn't have really any contractors come in. So at this point in time, I'm still, and I just graduated Texas A&M. And I bought land. I think the day I moved out of College Station, I actually bought the land, and 6 weeks later I broke ground. So at this point in time, I'm starting to become a little bit more of an adult, right? So I'm going from this young, hungry kid that wants all kind of stuff, to now I'm starting to play and getting in with adults, right? So I got to put my big boy shirt on, and I got to start acting more like a professional, more and more, because now I'm getting in the big leagues. For instance, this piece of machinery right here, $20,000. That piece of machinery right there, $25,000. Okay? We come over here, we have this piece of machinery right here. This is an $80,000 setup, and now this is a big CNC. So like in my little CNC room, you had the little one that did the engraving, then you had the little bit bigger one that cut out our products. Now this is even a bigger one that cut out products. and so it's actually 60% faster. So now I'm taking what I learned from Dr. Rister's program and applying it to real life scenarios. And so what y'all are doing in this class is not a joke. It gets really practical real fast, okay? 3 months fresh out, I'm starting to play with the big boys now, and I gotta buy big boy machinery to compete where I wanna compete at, what level I wanna compete at, all right? So, come on. So these are my raw goods. These are my raw cost of goods, inventory, all that stuff. This is my cost of goods sold, okay? Now we're going into my office space. I built a 540 square foot gym in my facility because maintaining good health is very important. So as an entrepreneur, when you're going through, or as an entrepreneur or as an employee, whatever you want to do, just make sure you're maintaining your health by exercising, eating good, because energy and time are two things that, energy you can actually control, time you can't. But the amount of energy you put into the time matters a lot. So make sure that you have a proper diet and make sure you're exercising. All right, guys, so we're in my new storage room now, and I'm standing beside one of those giant tall stacks of man stands I've been talking about. And I kind of want to point out three things when I'm talking about these man stands, and really the quantity I've made of them. So I want to talk about strategic and competitive advantage, market retention, how I got my customers, how I kept my customers, and I want to talk about risk mitigation. So first thing I want to talk about is my competitive advantage. So, you know, I talked about all the stuff I used to make and all these tables and cutting boards. Well, whenever I got that first little CNC, I first got it to make cool cutting boards with. And then when I got into that store and it failed, I had to pivot. I had to find something else I could do with it. So it was 4 in the morning one time, one morning, and I was scared out of my mind. I think my truck broke down. I had the money to pay for it, right? Because I've been putting all the money into machinery, which is not a good idea at the time, but you know, I had to do something. And so I designed this little docking station, okay? And this is actually my very first design I did. And within 6 weeks, it took off and it did $43,000 in sales, okay? And I took pictures with my phone. It wasn't good pictures. I put them on Etsy, where I have a lot of my business, and it took off. But before that, I probably tried 300 different products before I found my niche product in my niche market, okay? And within that niche market, my niche was docking stations. And when you're on an online platform where you're global, you have millions and millions and millions of customers. It's not like local, right? So I don't think I probably sold 2 of these local my whole time I've had these, right? So I did over 50,000 of these. I've sold over 50,000 of these. I probably sold 2 local, okay? So going an online market for me, my online market niche was docking stations, okay? And what I did with that CNC, that little one, I showed you the video, I started engraving names onto it. And I was one of the very first ones to do that. And it actually upsells. And so I charged $10 for that customization that nobody was doing. I offered some different colors, and I started engraving on them. And that increased my value of my product by 25%. It made actually more people come to me, because now I'm competing with the guys that are maybe sitting in their garage making these, and I have a $6,000 machine that very little people can afford, and I'm engraving on them. So that competitive advantage, or that competitive strategy that I use or strategic advantage that I use of the personalized names and the different colors, that combination helped me really take off on this product. So it took me probably 3 months to realize that I needed to do the engraving and to get that competitive advantage. But once I did, everything shot off. And so now that little CNC that I showed you engraving, that little CNC cost me $6,000, has done over $300,000 worth of engravings on these, okay? So with that being said, let me get to another point. Whenever you have a business and you're and you're probably trying to do everything. Let's say you have a coffee shop, right? And when you open that coffee shop, you may be trying to sell, coffee shops are going to sell coffee. You're not going to go and sell chicken fried steaks and do dinner and then do this weird breakfast. You're going to try to sell coffee, maybe some donuts, maybe a little bit of sandwiches. But when you first start out, you're probably just going to master coffee, and that's what you need to do, okay? And then when you grow big enough, maybe you can branch out to sandwiches or cinnamon rolls, then sandwiches and a light lunch, and maybe you go into smoothies or something else. But you have to make sure you master one thing. Let's say you're going into sales and you're going into insurance, right? Or you start your own agency and you're trying to sell everything. Well, if you're putting 10% of your time into life insurance, 10% into health, 10% into auto, 10% into home, when you compete on a higher level and you're competing against one guy that put 100% of his time into life insurance, that guy is going to beat you every single time, okay? So with me, I put 100% of my time, 100% of my machine's capabilities into making a very good product, very well, very efficient. And while all these other guys are maybe making docking stations, cutting boards, I focused on one thing, and that one thing is what made me all of my money. Now, when I talk about risk mitigation, you're saying, well, Ryan, you're only doing one revenue stream and you're only selling one product. What happens if that falls flat? Cool, I got you. I feel that. Well, my risk mitigation is that my machines that I have are multifunctional. So whenever, let's say this stops selling today. Tomorrow, I can take my machines and start making different products with them instantly, okay? The only thing I may be out is my raw goods, right? Which is probably 3% of the cost of this material, of this product. So whenever you have, let's say, a coffee shop or insurance, your risk mitigation may be the ability to pivot, okay? That is my risk mitigation strategy. I can pivot very quickly. And since I am online, that's a competitive advantage I have versus a brick and mortar store, okay? So right now the coronavirus happened. We're going through this shock, okay? And all of these brick and mortars, these restaurants are closing down and all that. But the restaurants that have drive-through and online ordering are just blowing up, right? And bars, it's kind of hard, but these restaurants that are doing online sales and drive-thrus, that was their tiny competitive advantage or tiny market they were in. Now it blew up in their ability to adapt and pivot. So as you're going into business, or as you're looking at businesses to go into as far as work for, you need to look and see if they have a pivot or an adaptability strategy in place. My adaptability strategy is that my machines can make various products. Right now, this product is selling, and this is my flagship product. But now, and just now, this new facility, all this stuff, we're finally making different product lines. And we plan on using different machines. Now that these machines are so efficient at making stuff, we can make enough of these, and then with that extra 20% of time, we'll start experimenting with different product lines. So let's go upstairs and talk some business. All right, so before I talk about this little chart and what this means, I kind of want to talk about employee retention. So I'm going to bring up Anthony. So he's been videoing this whole time, and he's been a part of the company since really when we started. So when I was 19, he was actually my very first full-time employee, and he came on right before our very first Christmas rush, right? And I designed the man stands. Anthony came in, and Anthony said he wanted to say a few words, so I'll let him say a few words real quick.
I remember after the Christmas rush was over, I think it was in January, I asked Ryan when we were working, probably midday, I asked him, hey, how far do you think we're going to take this? And then almost instantly, he thought about it for a bit. He said, I think I'm going to take it as far as I can go. So throughout 5 years of working with Ryan, seen people come and go, and just sometimes it's only been me and him. And throughout the years, I've learned a lot. I learned about the machines, how to make sure our product is nice and smooth. And from sanding to detailing, operating the machines, I went from that went to the machines, and now I help record and edit videos.
So, back to employee retention. Like Anthony said, he's been with me for 5 years. He's seen lots of people come and go. I've probably had 30 different people come in and out, maybe part-timers, maybe full-timers, come in and out. I've had 72-year-olds work for me. I've had 14-year-olds work for me. Don't really advise the 14-year-old part, but I have had them work for me. And what I can say about employees is that you don't know what you're going to get. You have to, if you're looking for a long-term one, you're not going to know right away. It takes, really, unless you have some sixth sense, you're not going to know, right? And when I hired Anthony, let's say, I got very lucky having him as the first employee, but, it's a Sunday right now, we're videoing this, and Anthony came in on a Sunday. He's put in probably over 20 80-hour weeks for me throughout the years. He's been at the shop at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and stuff like that. So if you can ever find somebody that'll stick with you like that, you do not let them go. And you make sure that they learn and grow with you, you nurture them, and make sure they nurture you, okay? And make sure they actually help, but you build them up, and I promise you, you'll get it back tenfold. Now, bad employees, it's very hard. Firing your very first employee will feel awful. It's probably worse than breaking up with a girlfriend. Actually, I know for a fact it's about 3 times as bad as breaking up with a girlfriend. But you got to do it because if they're causing stress and taking money away from the business and not doing a good job, sometimes not all firings are easy. Some are different. Some's immediate, like they did something bad, they're gone. But another one may just be they're not a good fit, right? And so if you're in a managerial spot or own your own business, just know that you always need to hire slow and fire fast. But make sure that you understand employees and people. So I read a lot of psychology books to try to understand how employees think, how I need to think, how to understand personalities, right? So you're not having a very outgoing, energetic person and you're getting mad at them because they're not organized. Because a lot of times, outgoing, energetic people ain't organized, and you can't want the introvert that's very computer-oriented, very organized, maybe out there leading a group of people and trying to get them going and being the shop floor guy. So my advice on employee management is nurture, hire fast, or hire slow, fire fast, and then read a lot and understand your people and your management. Now, back to this. So this is actually a sales chart. So in the blue is actually my previous year's sales. So we have a spike during Valentine's, Father's Day, and Christmas, right? These are our spikes. This is what I have to manage, okay? What's in the green is this year, okay? In 2020, and the spike that I had to manage this whole coronavirus shock year. And this is, I haven't even been graduated a year. So in June is when or May right here is when I graduated from A&M in 2019. So this is not even a full year when I had my first shock year. So when you're going through this program, just understand that shock years are a real thing, okay? So I highlight this point right here. So this is signing day. Signing day is the day that I actually went in debt for the first time in the business, okay? And when I say in debt, I went in debt. This is a loan for the barn and all that expensive equipment out there. I actually could not bootstrap anymore, most of it, right? So I funded half of it and I had a loan for the other half, right? So this whole facility we're in and all that stuff, I finally had to go to a bank to get a loan. So I signed right here. 3 days later, the first shutdown happened nationwide where really the first bad coronavirus thing happened. Within 2 weeks, whole nation was shut down. And my sales dropped, okay? I didn't know that this giant spike was going to happen, keep in mind, right? So I signed my life away. Just know that I signed away everything I worked for all these years, and then all of a sudden, coronavirus happens 2 weeks, 3 days to 2 weeks later. Trust me, I don't know exactly, but it was really close to 2 days, to 3 days to 2 weeks, okay? It dropped. What do you do, right? What do you do in a shock year? This is called a black swan, shock year, whatever you want to call it, right? It happened. I was scared out of my mind, okay? But once again, the one thing they cannot take away from you is working, okay? Now, what I did, I started putting in 100-hour weeks to figure out my competitive advantage, my next strategic move. But what I had to do for my employees, since I didn't know what was going to happen, I cut back hours to 30 hours a week. A lot of people had to lay off. I got all my guys and said, look, either one of y'all has to go or we're all going to cut back. And they all agreed, hey, we all like working here. We can survive a little bit. We'll work with you, because I had good employees. And they said, all right, let's cut back to 30 hours for whatever length of time we need to, right? And so we cut back. I brought into overhaul mode and started figuring out marketing a little bit and where I was in the marketplace. And this is not because of me. This giant spike is not all because of me. Online sales started ramping up and up and up and up. And so all of a sudden we had this giant spike where we did this giant spike, okay? All of this, we already sold as much as we did all of last year, this year already, okay? So not only was it a shock year bad for me at this point in time, it turned into a great shock at this point in time, okay? This is about a 2-month gap or 6-week gap, okay? Did I have enough product made right here? No. So I had to hire 7 people when this thing started to spike and started to hit right here. I had to hire and hire and hire. But what I did, once again, I was adaptive, and I was able to navigate this shock. And since I had adaptive machinery, I already had my risk mitigation plan in place, I was able to take a shock year and turn it into something good. Even though this is about a shock month, when most businesses were out of business, going out of business because they lived, their bank account, their cash flow was very bad, I was able to turn it into something great. If I was not prepared at this point in time right here, it could have been disastrous for my business. But I planned ahead. Really, yeah, I planned ahead for probably 2-3 years when I started getting into Dr. Rister's program, and I was able to turn something very bad into something very good. And that is how I personally navigated my shock year. So now I want to kind of go into a Q&A, or frequently asked questions. So I'm kind of going to get set up, and we're going to go into the Q&A. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. Question: how do you establish yourself as a young entrepreneur? To me, in the world of entrepreneurship, you don't look at age too much. So being a young entrepreneur is no different than being an old entrepreneur. You need to make sure you know whatever topic you're going into, whatever industry you're going into, know it as best as you can, read up on it, do your research, do your due diligence, and you can compete. Industry knowledge is key in knowing your numbers and knowing your business. So it doesn't matter if you're a young entrepreneur or old entrepreneur, establishing yourself should be all in the same. Now, being young does have its advantages, and I want y'all to use those advantages. So if you don't have kids right now, you can probably work 80 to 100 hours a week versus somebody that has a newborn, or somebody that has 3 kids and a wife and have to take their son to baseball practice. You can beat that person. You can outwork that person. You may not be able to outsmart that person or out-strategize because they have experience on you, but you can definitely outwork that person. I use my age as a benefit on online marketing, because I'll tell them, hey, I'm helping this. This is helping pay for college, and this is putting me through school. And I was able to grab a customer base that wanted to support me and put me through college, and that really helped. So I turned being young into an advantage. So make sure that you can turn being young into an advantage and use your advantages. Whatever advantages that you think you have, use them, embrace them. What are the top 3 pieces of advice you can give anybody or wish you knew coming into the world of entrepreneurship? Number 1 is I started implementing this when I was 19 years old. It's called the 99% rule. I kind of made it up, but to me it's the 99% rule. So if you want to be like the top 1%, you cannot be like the other 99%, and don't expect to be like the other 99%. So let's say, for instance, the 99%, let's say they watch TV, they only work 40 hours a week, they don't read, they go on a whole bunch of vacations. Well, if you want to be in the top 1%, do the exact opposite of that. Don't watch any TV. Don't watch a lot of TV. Read a whole bunch. Work 80 hours a week. you have to put yourself in polar opposites. So don't expect to be in the top 1% if you're acting like the other 99%, and don't expect, if you're acting like the other 99%, to ever be a part of the top 1%. My advice number 2 is to have fun. Through this whole thing, I seem pretty serious and really motivated and really driven, and I am, but I have the time of my life either building this stuff. I'm with a lot of friends. My coworkers are my friends. The other day I'll provide a picture. I rented this giant water slide, a 75-foot long water slide, and we had a 6-month kind of party, right? A summer party. We went to Slitterbond before. Even when we're working, we'll have competitions and have a lot of fun. So advice number 2 is have a lot of fun with it. And the last piece of advice I can give you is you need to make sure you understand yourself and understand the risk you're getting into, whether either you're going into a job or going and starting your own business. And by understanding yourself, you need to reflect and kind of see how your personality is, how you handle difficult situations, easy situations, awkward social situations, and you need to really reflect upon that and kind of think, okay, how did I handle this, or how can I improve? How can I take this bad habit away? How can I improve this good habit? And if you understand the risk and you're okay with the very worst case scenario, whatever situation you're going into, let's say you're starting a business, if you know that you have a 95% chance of failure going into the business and you're okay with that, and you look at the worst case scenario and say, okay, worst case scenario, I have to move back home with my parents and I have no money. And if you're okay with that, you can go forth fearlessly. So as an entrepreneur, if you assume and you're okay with the worst case scenario, or as an employee, worst case scenario, you get fired, you'll go find another job, right? You can go forth in whatever path you choose fearlessly because you're okay with the absolute worst thing that can happen. Now, you're not scared of, like, you're worried about it happening, but you've got to be okay and content with the worst case scenario happening, and then you can go forth. And once I wrap my head around that, which is very recent, it set off a giant light bulb of creativity, and I was able to pursue this wholeheartedly and fearlessly. So that's my top three pieces of advice.